And go.
All right. Well, welcome everybody. We have our book, Get Over Your Damn Self, and we are on chapter 6. And this chapter is She's Interested, Now What? Right? So we talked about all the different ways to the different types of people that you should be reaching out to. In the last chapter, she even talked about different ways to reach out to different people, like and gave really great examples. So if you did not read that chapter, definitely go back because there are some really good examples of how to reach out to people. And then anybody who is a leader on this call, which I believe everybody is pretty much, these are some great tools to use with your people when they say, I don't have anybody. I've talked to everybody, and all those things, just to kind of help walk them through maybe fine tuning some of the things that they're going to talk to the people about, right? And just figuring out their pain points and helping them craft a custom conversation versus a blanket word choice that you can use with anybody you're trying to recruit, right? So when you narrow down that target, you're more likely to get the yes, right? So now she's interested. Now what? So Jenny, would you mind reading for us?
Certainly. Certainly.
Thanks.
Okay. First, I want you to know that I've come to dislike the traditional sales term close because I think it promotes hunter behavior. Instead, I like to think of the next stage of the conversation as the decision-making process, and your role is to help your prospect to determine if your business or your products are a good fit for her at this time. It involves getting someone through your funnel as quickly and efficiently as possible to find out how they fit into your business right now, as a team member, a customer, a connector, or a not right now. Because as you'll learn, if you haven't already, there's nothing worse than a constipated funnel. During this process, you want to stay focused on the rules from the last chapter because they all still apply. Above all, your job while you take a prospect through their decision is to guide them through the exploratory process and help them figure out if you have something of use for them. Just a second. Alexa, turn it down. Everything you say and do should be motivated by helping someone come to the right decision for them. Remember, you aren't attached to the outcome of any one conversation. If you keep the process this simple, you'll be more confident and purposeful and a lot more efficient. In Blink, Malcolm Gladwell talks about two types of decision makers: the gunslingers and the methodical, analytical, need to look at things from every angle and all sides type. The key to effective and efficient closing practices is to keep control of the process and the regardless of what type of decision maker you're talking to. According to Gladwell, great decision makers aren't those who process the most information or spend the most time deliberating, but those who have perfected the art of thin slicing, filtering the few factors that matter from an overwhelming number of variables. The closing tools that successful business builders use are designed to help people, regardless of what type of decision maker, in their thin slicing. We want to help each person filter the factors important to their decision making so they're able to come to a quicker decision that's right for them. It's been my experience that gunslingers are more rare. It's interesting to know that in our entire huge organization, almost every single one of the most successful business builders have been gunslingers with regard to making the decision whether to start a business. Even if they said no first, they said no quickly. And when they took another look, they said yes quickly. I'm certainly not suggesting that you should write off anyone who doesn't come to a quick decision, but your process should be designed to add the gunslingers as quickly as possible, show them how to do the same, and help the rest come to a decision that serves them and doesn't slow you down in the process. When you're talking to a process and you've led with WIIFT, shared a brief overview about your company and your products or services, and told your short personal story, a simple way to move the conversation forward is to ask, so are you intrigued enough to want to learn more? Or would you like to learn more to see if this might be a good fit for you? If they answer affirmatively, tell them that you'll be sending them a few things to look over and or listen to. What those things are will depend on what your company and your upline leaders provide for you to use in your closing process. It may include videos, recorded calls, website content, blogs, and more. But remember rule number 3, less is more. Don't overwhelm your prospect with too much content. I coach our team to send a brief and compelling video of our founders, a short info call I recorded, and an entry or two from our company's blog that they think will resonate with their prospect. Then it's essential to tee up the next conversation. If there's an event in the next 24 to 48 hours, invite her to that. After reviewing everything, I know you'll have some questions. We're having a get together tomorrow night. It would be the perfect opportunity to get your questions answered, get a sense of how collaborative this business is, and figure out if you'd like to be a part of it. I'd love to put you on the guest list. It's important to understand why I'm putting a time limit on the next event of just 24 to 48 hours. If the event is farther away, why wait to push the prospect through your funnel? You can set up a three-way conference call instead and actually use the upcoming event as a closing carrot for coming in during that conversation. If this is a good fit, you should really get started and take advantage of our event next week to start growing your team and customer base. Remember that we want to move our prospects through the process as quickly as possible. The more time they have between touch points, the more likely it is they'll get cold feet or talk to someone with a poor opinion of our profession. Can you guys give me like 2 seconds here?
So I love when she talks about we want them to move through the process as quickly as possible, because how many of you have ever like let's see here, how many of you have ever like you have somebody, right, and you go to follow up with them and that's exactly what happened. They talk to their sister, their cousin, their brother who is a direct selling expert and says nobody ever does that and you'd be silly for doing it, right? And so she's exactly right when it comes to that, is just, keeping it going as fast as you can. And it is truly a decision-making process. You'll find people that they really really think hard about the decision. How many of you made a quick decision when it came to joining Tupperware? Did you, Melissa? See, that's funny because you strike me as somebody who actually usually takes a longer time in your decision-making process.
I do. It
Yeah,
honestly, it was for Cam because she was my niece to help her out.
right.
So that was the main reason.
Yeah, because you
And
were
I
like,
do
oh, you
love
need help?
Tupperware.
Yeah,
My mom sold it at one point. My grandma sold it at one point, so I knew about it, which did help.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so for me, it took me a while, because I was thinking about joining Tupperware long before I actually did, but I kept just kind of like, should I? Nah. Is it gonna work? No, probably not. Like I just kind of would talk myself out of it without even saying anything to Pam. So, all right, Jenny's back.
Look at you now, Miss Ellen.
Right, exactly.
Hang on, I'm trying to figure out where it quit. Okay. If there isn't an event right around the corner, or if your prospect can't make the event, then tee up the conference call. After reviewing everything, I know you'll have some questions. So let's schedule a time to talk so we can get them all answered. I'm going to invite my friend and business partner to join us. She'll give you another perspective, and together we can help you figure out if this is a good fit for you. It's helpful to have prearranged times when your upline is available, or access to your upline's calendar of available slots through an online calendaring service. If you don't have either, simply get free available times the prospect will be available in the next, you guessed it, 24 to 48 hours, and then loop with your upline to determine which one works. If you're freaked out or nervous about offering a conference call with your upline, get over it. It's one of the most important closing tools we have in our toolkit. We'll thoroughly explore how to execute three-way calls in this chapter. Just remember to position the call as a resource to help your prospect, which is exactly what it is. Throughout this conversation, your prospect might start asking questions. Answer the ones you feel comfortable answering. The simple answers to common objections in the next chapter will help, but by no means think that you're supposed to have an exhaustive conversation at this point. Remember, your job is to guide them to the next step. The next step is to take a look at or listen to more information and to either hop on a call with a business partner or go to an event. Here's the key. Don't ask, but tell your prospect what the next steps are. Your prospect isn't in the business. She doesn't know how it works or the most efficient way to explore whether it's a good fit. You're the expert. Speak with confidence. Don't ask the prospect if they want to have a conversation with your business partner. Tell her the next step is to help her decide is a phone conversation with you and your business partner, because she should get another team member's perspective, and you know she'll have questions. If you remember the difference, it will change the speed of your prospect's decision. Especially when you're green, it's helpful to have what I like to call a pivot statement to stop the seemingly never-ending stream of questions that occasionally happen and move the prospect to the next step. Simply say, these are great questions and it definitely sounds like you want more info. So let me tell you what we'll do next. Then go through the process above of teeing up the next steps. Easy peasy. We've talked about how to introduce the three-way call to your prospects. Now we're going to focus on how to effectively execute this mother of decision-making tools. Believe in the three-way, crave the three-way, master the three-way. I must point out that even though we refer to these calls as three-ways and greatly delight in the sexual innuendo, don't use this term on the outside world. Instead, call them a phone chat or a conversation. First, let's cover why you should believe in them. They provide compelling third-party legitimization. They allow your upline to train you how to handle objections and bring a prospect to a close. They move your prospect through your funnel efficiently. Even if you can bring your prospects quickly to a decision on your own, the majority of your team members likely won't be able to. Now the logistics. If there's been a day or more since your last conversation, it's good to confirm the call time with your prospect the day before the call via text message or email. When it's time for the call, get your prospect on the phone first, then conference in your upline. To avoid those awkward technology fails, if you're not familiar with the conference call feature on your phone, you'll want to practice first. For a three-way call to be successful, your upline business partner needs to be prepared with information on your prospect. Whenever possible, send your business partner a brief email or text, whichever they prefer, the night before or at least an hour before the call. This will help your upline gather her thoughts and any stories she thinks might be helpful. Keep in mind that you and your team members get more experience with three-way calls. You should be able to do a killer call even without prior knowledge to the prospect. This exercise also helps you properly introduce the prospect to your upline. The information should include your prospect's name, where she lives, city, state, country, how you know her, what does she currently do professionally or in the past, why you think she'd be good at this business, what's attracting her to the business, whether she's driven and hardworking, other strengths she has, what concerns or objections she has already raised. You and your upline must come to a three-way call with clear goals. With each call, you're aiming to do one of the following: enroll a new business partner, book a follow-up appointment, ask for referrals, and enroll them as a customer. With those goals in mind, let's go over the flow of the call. Once everyone is on the line, introduce your prospect and your upline to each other. This short introduction should be no more than a minute. It should contain an introduction, how you know each other, why you think she'd be great at this, and what's in it for her. We're going to pretend now that I'm your upline sponsor and you're bringing the prospect to a three-way call with me. Here's what your introduction would sound like. Rami, I wanted to introduce you to my friend Jane, then include how you know Jane and an authentic compliment. Jane and I used to work together at a hospital in Chicago, and she's one of the most outgoing and magnetic people I know. She's open to the idea of earning some extra money, but says she doesn't want to bite off more than she can chew. So I'm really excited for her to learn more about our company and how this could fit into her life. This is where you briefly add in specifics that reiterate why you want to work with your prospect, demonstrating that you really listen to her and letting her hear WIIFT once again. Jane, I'm thrilled you get the chance to talk with my friend, Rami. She'll give you her perspective and answer any questions you have. Rami, I'll let you take it from here. Once you finish the introduction, you stop talking. I take it from there and run the call, and you don't talk unless I ask you to chime in or unless your prospect asks you something directly. It's important for me as the upline to quickly set the tone of the call at the beginning, taking the pressure off the prospect so they're more open to hearing what I have to say. Sorry. I remember being in your shoes, Jane, and I wasn't sure what to expect on a call like this, but I want you to know that I'm not in the business of trying to convince anyone they should start a business of their own. It's simply my job to share my experience and answer any questions you may have to see if this is a good fit for you. Does that sound good? Then I share my short story, making sure to highlight any common points that are relevant and relatable to her. Then I ask her why she's intrigued about our business, which draws out her why. Her answer will help me tailor my answers to her upcoming questions and then to replay them back to her when I ask her to make a decision. Then I briefly share the facts of our business, emphasis on briefly. I specifically use the word facts because at this point in the conversation, I'm not sharing opinions. I'm listing the inarguable facts about our company, our products, the business channel, and the income potential in succinct and compelling message points. Next, I turn the conversation back to the prospect. I've shared a lot of information, Jane. What questions do you have? This is almost always the longest part of the call, in which I answer Jane's questions about what we do, how we do it, and how she could do it too, and I field her objections. Once all the questions have been answered and the objections addressed, it's time to gauge the prospect's readiness to make a decision. Okay, Jane, tell me on a scale of 1 to 10, 1, you're ready to hang up the phone and run, and 10, that you'd like to get started today. Where are you?
No.
If she says 1 to 4, I'd respond, this business doesn't seem like it's a good fit for you, and immediately move to a conversation about becoming a customer and getting referrals. If she says 6 or 7, I'd move the business conversation forward. It seems like you still have some questions to get you more comfortable. What can I help answer? This will get to the core objections. If she's an 8 or a 9, I know I'm likely to help her decide to join our business on the call. So I show Jane what the next step is. If she's ready to enroll, I describe the simple way we'll get her started and ask if she has a few minutes now. If she doesn't have time then, I prompt you and Jane to schedule a time right then for later today or tomorrow for an enrollment appointment. As we've all experienced, immediate enrollment doesn't always happen. Wouldn't that be nice? Even if a prospect is a 9 or a 10. Quite often, they need to discuss it with their husbands, check their finances, get through busy projects at their day jobs, etc. So you want to be ready to respond with next steps that will keep her moving through the funnel and will help you and your team member maintain control of the timeline. If the prospect needs to talk with her husband, validate that. Of course, you should discuss this with your husband. Let me know if he has any questions. I talk to husbands all the time. Can you talk with him tonight? Then book a follow-up appointment right then, inviting the husband as well for no later than 48 hours. It's been my experience that if you wait any longer than that, you'll likely lose them. If your team has access to an info call specifically tailored for husbands, my husband John has a phenomenal one for our team that speaks to the specific questions spouses have. Mention it to your prospect and send it immediately following the call. If they aren't interested in the business, enroll them as a customer. I totally understand if this business isn't for you. It isn't for everyone, but these products or services are for everyone. I'd be honored to have you as a customer. Remember to ask for referrals. By now, you know the drill. You may know some people who I can help. Here's who I'm looking for. Include detailed descriptions and always describe the person you're talking to first. Remember, whether you're bringing the call to your upline or the upline is leading the call, be confident and know that you're providing a helpful and efficient forum for the prospect to decide if she wants to join you in business. Start benefiting from your products or services or connecting you with people in her network. There are 3 reasons why 3 ways go bad. The call runs too long. Calls are usually no more than 15 to 25 minutes max. This is for several reasons. You don't want to overwhelm the prospect. It's not duplicable for busy working people to have 30 to 45-minute calls throughout the day to work their business. It's not possible for busy leaders to fit in that many calls in a week if they're all marathon gab fests. Generally speaking, everything that needs to be said can be accomplished in that time. If you're going over 15 to 20 minutes, you're being redundant and not focusing on the things you should be, which are handling objections and guiding the prospects to a decision. Now, of course, there are exceptions to the brevity rule. For example, if you've got a talker on the line who just won't shut up, make sure they're being heard, but guide the conversation as quickly as you can to the important parts. You'll also have calls with prospects who have a gazillion questions, since they're trying to explore and understand every single aspect of the business. Listen to and answer all her questions, but if you run out of time, don't hesitate to schedule a follow-up call later in the day or tomorrow, and have your business partner send relevant information that addresses some of her outstanding questions. Yet make sure that you're not in convincing mode. If you find yourself convincing someone to do this, the call's gone on too long. I always let my business partners know either before the call or before adding in the prospect how much time I have and to keep an eye on the clock. It's her job to keep an eye on the time and make sure she's helping you get off the phone. I train my team members to simply say during a pause in the conversation, I know you've got to go, Rami, so why don't you take one more question and then we can always schedule a time to continue the conversation later today. Your business partner doesn't set up the call correctly. It's imperative that you teach your team how to intro the call once all the parties are there. The introductions are the key to kicking off the call with a casual and relaxed vibe. It's so awkward for all 3 people when the when the builder bringing her prospect doesn't launch into introductions, instead allowing an awkward silence. Your upline doesn't fact find at the beginning. If you don't take the time to ask the prospects about their life and why they're interested in the business, you miss out on valuable information that will help you show them why your business makes sense for them. Allow them to tell you about their life and their pain points so you can later demonstrate that people just like them are having success. Since people love talking about themselves most, this helps build rapport between you and the prospect. Anyone who's brought me a three-way call has heard me ask this question. So prospect, my friend, gave you a great intro, but I'd like to hear a bit more about you and your life and what it is about our business that's intriguing you the most. This usually gives me enough to know what to highlight most during the rest of the call.
Hey, Jenny, pause for just a quick second.
Yep.
The thing that I like when she kind of is talking about three-way calls and things like that, whether it's a three-way call or if it's a three-way message, right? This can be transferable to that. So for some of you who do a lot, like your team does a lot of like group messaging and things like that, this is something that you can do that way. I try to have people on my team when they recruit somebody to bring me into a message with the three of us, just so that I can say hi, they can introduce me, I can say hi, kind of get to the bottom of it. But this is like kind of doing it before that, and think about it. If they do a three-way message with you and then the person does say yes, right there, they have an easy pipeline to you. If they have questions or anything like that, the introduction's already been made. I find that when they take that step and do that, there's more communication with the new recruit, right? They don't really, if we get that conversation going, I find that they don't ghost us as much. They might say, this isn't quite as much as what I want to do, or they might say, I really truly want the kit, and that's totally fine too, but at least you're getting an answer. And so I love the idea of being able to do that before, in the form of recruiting efforts. And she's right about, like, if your call goes too long, you're being redundant. I mean, so I myself, right, when my head's not clear that day or whatever, if I'm training, sometimes I find myself, I'll loop back and I'm like, whoa, okay, you've already said that, Ellen, it's time to shut it down. Like, I don't know what you're doing. You're like runaway train right here, but shut it down. And so we do the same thing in conversations, right? And so it's important to kind of just recognize that, and even maybe just have bullet points. And if they've already confided in you the pain points, like who the recruiter is, confided in you the pain points on this person, you already you're going to let her tell you. You're not going to be like, oh, we were talking all about you, and Tupperware can help you make some money since you're like financially ruined. Like, you're not going to say anything like that. You want to make sure, that allow that person to share with you what they're comfortable sharing with you. And so even though you might know a little bit more, you don't ever want to allude to that, because that feels uncomfortable and kind of slimy. But yeah, so any other thoughts anybody has on this?
When you're talking about like on a call, but if you're doing a group message, I've seen people add people to their group chats way too early,
Yes.
because you can't control what gets said in a group chat.
Mm-hmm.
And if they ask a question and all of a sudden you get everybody's opinion on your team on that question, depending on the day everybody's having, some of those points might not be too positive, and that's not what you want them to see first.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, and it's really important to me. Like, if I'm going to add somebody to our group chat, I welcome them before I even put them in it. Like, I will put, you guys help me welcome Jane into the group, and then I add Jane, so that if there's
Right.
if anything's going to happen first, I can catch it first.
Also, it can be a little bit overwhelming, because some of those groups can be like rapid fire, right? At times, when everybody's kind of like happens to be present and they're in the mood to talk. And so it's not a bad idea to kind of start them for a couple days in a little three-way chat versus throwing them into the deep end with something like that. With
anything else, you don't want to say, welcome Jane, and have two comments down be, listen, my stuff's been on back order for 6 months, and yeah, no.
Right. Exactly. And also like talking about setting the tone before the call. That is so important. And think about it this way, right? So when we would meet at the training center, right? When we would meet in Strongsville, we would typically like if you were going to introduce somebody to Pam, right? Even like during the meeting, you're kind of like saying some things probably before the meeting and probably even before they even walked in the door. You've already kind of set the tone for what is Pam, right? And then even when you're like if you're sometimes there would a line would form for people to meet Pam, right? And so even when you're standing in line with this new prospect, you're talking to them and you're talking Pam up and you're doing all of that stuff, and that's so vitally important. We know that, right? And so a lot of times we take that on at the meeting, even if it's not our guest, if it's a guest of somebody on our team, we take that on and we just kind of like talk everybody up and all that good stuff. And so but that's kind of what we're needing them to do in this instance before, and even like whether it's a group message or phone call, whatever it is, they need to be like, hey, let's do a call with my upline, Jenny. She's been in the business several years and she really knows her stuff. So I would love for you to kind of get to know her, and maybe be able to ask some questions from her that I might not have all the answers to, or something along those lines, but just kind of like elevating them a little bit. And that's kind of what we want them to do. And it's one of those things. So when because we went through a time period where we were pretty consistent doing this several years ago, and that was like when we first read the book years ago. Um, and and what I found was in the beginning it was kind of clunky, right? But after people like had invited somebody like 2 or 3 times, that like we'd done a call like 2 or 3 times with various people, they started kind of getting it. And so I would coach them after each one, be like, gosh, that was great. Here's, what did you say to her before we got on the call? And then I would kind of do a little bit of, fine tuning of some of the things that were said prior to the call, to just like, again, set the stage. You don't want somebody to feel like it's a bait and switch. If you're just like, you're not selling it the right way, or you're not even just communicating with it the right way, what's going to go down, they're going to feel like it's a bait and switch. And so that's why it's just so important that piece. But that's something that kind of comes with practice, and so, and with us just kind of following up with people and being like, talk to me about, what went down beforehand, what went down after I left the call, or, and just kind of getting them to, in a training standpoint, because whether or not you get the recruit, it doesn't matter. That like there's a lot of really good training that goes on there. Them hearing your word choices, talking to the person, them communicating properly to the person what's about to happen, them being able to go in and help them in the decision making process after they find out the information. There's a lot of really good fine tuning of training that you can do in those moments.
I think too, it's really important that whoever is the consultant that's setting up the three-way call, that as leaders or as their upline or whoever their upline is, we make sure they know that it's not that we don't have to do these calls because we think they can't close the deal or we think they don't know enough. That it's just, somebody else for them to talk to, and that, I don't know, like I get excited for people to my upline, Ellen and Pam. I get excited if people can have a conversation with them because I know it's going to be a good thing. So like if you're the upline that they're calling, you need to make sure that nothing is coming out of your mouth like, well, I can answer questions she doesn't know the answer to, because
Right.
you have to make them look just as knowledgeable as you are, just that you
Yeah.
like to get to know the people that are coming onto the team or something like that. I don't
And
know.
it's truly just another voice, right? Think about parenting. That's why it's better to have another voice there. And even if you're a single parent, having a friend, somebody that's trusted, that your kids trust, that can be another voice, even if you're saying the same thing. I mean, my goodness, as leaders, how many times do we say something 5 times and then our person goes and here's a training, they're like, I heard the most amazing thing tonight. And we're like, really? Really? I've said it 5 times. it's just a different voice is all it is. It's not that, one may or may not be, well, one may or may be more knowledgeable in certain points and angles of the business, right? If you have never had children and you don't really, I mean, people with children, but it's not like you're really close in that relationship, you may not be able to relate to somebody who is trying to raise children and is thinking about a direct sales business. That's where another, viewpoint can be helpful, and vice versa. I've got children. I'm kind of in the thick of all of that stuff right now. If I'm talking to somebody that's a retiree that's never had children, we're in really different places, and so a different voice kind of helps. And even if that other voice, it can't necessarily relate to them either, just the sheer fact, like they probably, like if I brought Pam in, Pam doesn't necessarily relate to that scenario either. However, she has worked with enough people over the years that have been in that situation that she might be able to offer a little bit more experience in that, from that direction. Oh my God, your dog just cracks me up, Jeff. So cute. I showed Ella the video of you throwing and the dog's like bounding through the house. And she was like, "Oh my gosh, that's the cutest dog." I was like, "He's blind and can't hear." And she's like, "How does he not run into everything?" I was like, "They don't move their furniture." Like,
If it was Odin, this one he can see. The
oh,
little one that I sent the picture of can't see or hear.
oh.
But sometimes it's easier just to, like, his back legs are up on the chair behind me, and the rest of it, he's just a goofball. Sometimes it's easier just to let him go than fight it.
Right. Yep. I get it.
it.
Oh my goodness. So funny. All right. Okay. Anybody else have anything they want to share, or do we want to just kind of move on?
I think that the key is that you definitely have prepped or had a phone conversation with whoever you're three-way calling with beforehand, because you just need to, you kind of need to level set, make sure that they're aware of everything going on, because the last thing you want to do is have, somebody say something that's like, oh my gosh, that like taboo for them, or it's a trigger point or something like that. So yeah, that's
Absolutely. And I've certainly stepped in that before. I think any of us have had any recruiting conversations have, you can't not at some point step into something like that. But also, we talk about people practicing, right? And so one of the things that we talk about when you want to start recruiting, start practicing on friends and family. And that's not a bad place to do that with a three-way call either. If the person is not confident about setting up a three-way call, you can set one up with their sister or their cousin or something like that. And hey, who knows, maybe that person will end up being recruited, but she can set it up like, hey, I need to practice this, can you help me? And that might help them get a little bit more confidence, so that going forward they feel a little bit more confident in just like the person that they just met in line at the bank inviting them to get on a call or whatever. And so I don't think that's a bad idea to, to somebody who's really interested in growing the business, and they're interested in, they need to be on board with a three-way call too. Some might be like, nope, not doing it. No, not until they hear other people's success, then maybe they might be open to it. But yeah, and so that's something, just to kind of think about is just having somebody who's really interested in stepping out and be like, if you're really interested, let's really fine tune your recruiting. Let's do some three-way calls. And they're like, oh, be like, hey, just, reach out to a couple family members and let's just practice. And you can see what I'm going to say. There's a trust thing too. If they don't know what you're going to say, they need to kind of, you know what I mean? Because yeah, I mean, just like Jeff just said, sometimes there's a trigger there, and I'm just like, oh, I hope that they don't mention this tonight, because it's not a bad thing in the business, but for this person in particular that I know I'm working with, that I invited to whatever, I'm like, I hope they don't mention this, because I know that it's something that is a turn off to them.
I agree with everything that you guys have said, totally. But I also I think it's important for the new prospect to understand or to hear a couple of different viewpoints, and also to understand, hey, there is support there above this person that I am talking to, my friend or whoever I know. She gets support. And I think that's important for people that are thinking about coming in. They know they're not just going to be out there floundering on their own, and there are people there to help and answer questions and do whatever. But I think that knowing there's a support system there from the beginning makes it easier too.
I totally agree with you on that, Lydia. It's kind of like taking people to your parties when all the guests at that party are seeing, wow, look, she's taking that. So if I joined, she would take me to a party potentially, and same thing, the person that's being recruited is like, oh, so if I joined and I wanted to really grow a business, this person is going to help me, or there's somebody like her that's going to help me,
Right.
So yeah, it's a good point, Lydia.
Right.
Definitely.
Absolutely.
Definitely. All right, Jenny, you want to continue on? Guide her decision to a decision? I think, is that where we're at?
Yes.
Okay.
Whether you're guiding someone to a decision on a three-way call for your downline, or having a one-on-one with someone at a coffee date, or after she's attended an event, there's an efficient and helpful way to naturally transition the conversation. After you've answered all her objections, replay what the prospect has told you she's looking for. This brings you full circle right back to WIIFT. This is why listening throughout your conversations is so important. It might sound something like this. Jane, I think this would be a great fit for you. You want to find a way to take fewer consulting gigs so you can spend more time with your kids, and to really insulate yourself from the down markets. Since it sounds like you'd be able to squeeze this business in around everything else on your plate, you love people and like the idea of helping other people succeed, this would work really well for you. Do you agree? Then you'd tell her, our next step is to tell you how we get you started. Sound good? There are times you've connected all the dots, replayed WIIFT, and there's still hesitation. There are a few helpful arrows to have in your quiver to get her to make a decision. You may decide to use one or all of them. Ask where she's at on the scale. Just as I coached you to do in the three-way call, this will help you see how far away she is from a yes and help you get to the root of her hesitation. Ask her what's at the root of her hesitation. Since you've likely answered all the typical objections that we review throughout thoroughly in the next chapter, it's likely because of the business model or lack of belief in herself. Don't be afraid to ask and get to the bottom of it, because remember, you can't educate about what's hidden. If it's because of the business model, ask more questions. Is it because you don't fully understand how it works, or because you're worried what others will think? Again, this will help you get to the root of her hesitation. Be honest with her. Some people might think you're crazy because you're doing this, but here's the important question. Why do you care? You're the one trying to juggle your demanding job and your family and still not feeling like you have enough money to get ahead. There will be people who don't support your business, but this decision isn't about them. It's about you and what you want.
Stop for just a second, Jenny. So this is actually what made me pull the trigger on Tupperware. It's that statement right there, about that it was my third direct sales company, about like just Tupperware, about all of that. I was so worried about that. And when I finally realized, like, they don't care. They don't care. They're not losing any sleep over our financial situation, And so I was like, so who cares what they think? I'm the one who needs to sleep at night. I'm the one who needs to pay my bills, and that was like such a huge realization for me. And I know that there are some people that they do let what other people think hold them back. And I'd be lying if I said that it never holds me back. It does still hold me back. It's just kind of like a natural occurrence. We want to please people. We want people to like us. We want people to be into what we're into, and they're not always, right? But just even that, I like the way she framed it up, because I had a hard time kind of putting into words for years. And what I finally, sometimes, I'm sure some of you have heard me say, that when I realized how little people actually thought of me, meaning how little time they spent thinking actually about me, I stopped being quite so concerned about what they thought about me selling Tupperware or any of that stuff. It was just such an eye opener for me. And I think there are a lot of people that let that hold them back in the business. And so just kind of knowing that that's one of those secret things that they a lot of times don't say. I'm afraid of what people are going to think of me. That's not something that people admit very often, because nobody likes to think that they really actually care what other people think of them, but we do. We do. We all do. So if you're sitting there thinking you're the only one, you're not. And so, but I love that statement. And it's a good way to, I mean, she's not talking about objections here, but it is a good way to overcome an objection that maybe they're not speaking, but maybe they are. What's happening there? Maybe they're not speaking. Maybe they're thinking, and just say it as like, hey, maybe you're thinking, you know maybe you're thinking that, what are people going to think? But you know what? They're not the ones dealing with, and then list those pain points. They're not the ones dealing with a special needs child that you really want to be able to spend as much time with as possible. They're not the ones dealing with, the financial stress and staying awake at night. They're not the ones dealing, and just to kind of help them, even if they don't sometimes I don't think people even realize that that's what they're thinking. They're just like, I don't know, and they might not be able to put their finger on that they're actually really truly worried about what other people think. So I just wanted to add that.
Oh, okay. The best way to handle lack of self-confidence is with an explanation of the support she'll get and success stories of others just like her. I'm very honest with prospects who doubt themselves. Ultimately, you've got to be willing to believe that you deserve to have more. That I cannot give you. That's got to come from you. You've got to be willing to believe that you deserve more than whatever the pain is. Ask her about her plan B. Replay her why to her once again, and then simply ask, if it's not through this business, what's your plan B to achieve that why? Talk about the worst case scenario. This works well to point out that there's very little to lose, and at the least, some great things to gain. I usually add in some dramatic flair that lessens the enormity of the decision and elicits some giggles. Okay, Jane, let's talk about the worst case scenario for you. It's not like you're about to invest $500,000 to open a franchise. The worst thing that could happen is list the potential benefits or your products or services at wholesale pricing. You'll earn your investment back if you do just a little work, and you'll be eligible for tax deductions that come with a home-based business. You might even have some fun. There's no doubt that you can master the skill of bringing people to their decision. It will become easier and more instinctual the more you do it. Please don't sabotage yourself by making up the story in your head that professional, efficient, and helpful conversations that ask your prospects to make decisions are pushy. Professional, efficient, and helpful is exactly what you and your prospects deserve. They've got a gift to share, and you're looking for people who want what you have to offer. And when you do, it's a blast. It's the reason that I still wake up every single day wanting to reach out and find our next business partner.
And it's true. That's, when Pam talks about, she hasn't done it in a while, but sometimes she'll say chocolates and sometimes she'll say diamonds. I guess depends upon whatever's on her mind that day. But she'll talk about, I have a tray of diamonds and I'm going to offer it to these people. And do you want the princess cut or the brilliant cut and all this? And then that if you skip somebody, right? And so that's where I think it's important that is the non-pushy, when you're trying to kind of remember in your mind that you don't want to be pushy, whether you're talking about diamonds or chocolates or French fries, okay, extra fries or whatever, your side when you're at a restaurant and they ask everybody at the table if they want an extra side and they don't ask you, you're like, what are you saying? I shouldn't be eating an extra side? What are you saying here? Right? Because sometimes people, they feel that way. If they see you kind of like, oh, they start talking among themselves. If it's like people in your community and they're like, oh yeah, I talked to her one time about selling Tupperware, and other person's like, oh yeah, she talked to me one time too. And the other person's like, well, she didn't talk to me. Does she think I'm not capable? And so it's important to just kind of put yourself out there and realize you're really not being pushy. You're just offering solutions and they can say no, right? Does anybody struggle with the pushy thing? Yeah.
So I used to, more than now. Every once in a while, you get a little twinge or something, but I used to until I learned that I'm just offering her a solution. I'm offering her a gift. I'm offering her an opportunity that is well worth it for her if she wants to take it. So when I started thinking about it's our job to give them the information, then it's their job to make a decision, makes a big difference because you don't feel as pushy and you're not trying to, like she says in here, when you're in convincing mode, you've gone too far. That's not where you want to be. That's not what you want to do. So, but when you're giving them the facts, you're giving them the information, you're offering them our opportunity in that, and then you let them make a decision. That takes all that pushiness away from you, I think.
Yeah,
So.
absolutely. Yes, Melissa.
My struggle with the pushy is the ones that don't give you an answer. They have questions, they talk to you, but when you point blank say, would you like to get started? This is what I can do, this is what we can do. They just don't answer. And I feel like I'm one of those people, I have to have a final answer. So I sort of have to pull back a little bit, because then I think that's when I start just information overload, because I feel like they don't know enough and that's why they're not answering. So this is where my struggle is right now.
If
Yeah,
they're-
that's where whenever people say the first one that talks loses.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm sorry.
I don't know who's talking. Sorry.
You're highlighted, Jeff. Go.
Sometimes if they're not giving you a verbal answer, the fact that they're not, they actually are.
Right.
They don't want to tell you no because they don't want to let you down, or they don't want to hurt your feelings, or they don't want to feel that you've wasted your time talking to them. And pushy, I'm one of these people that when somebody approaches me, on the rare occasion when I'm in a store and a sales clerk asks me if I need help finding something, like I get immediately agitated because my personality is I know what I'm looking for. If I need help, I'll go find somebody. Now, see, if they ask me before I even start looking, I get annoyed. And then if I can't find someone to ask later, I get annoyed. So I'm a horrible shopper. That's why I do most of it online anymore. But I do struggle with, like, I remember when Kevin approached me, it was like 5 or 6 times he asked me to join. And I was like, oh my God, I just want to go meet him and pick up the Tupperware that I ordered. I don't want to go through this. No, I don't want to sell Tupperware thing again. So part of it is I look at it from my perspective, and it's not, and I need to work on that, obviously, but I need to get better at not being pushy, but at least asking the questions.
Yeah, I agree. And Becky says here, she says she only feels pushy when she's in convincing mode. And then she said that's when, how do you feel between a scale of 1 to 10 helps? And it does help. And then also asking them, they come back at you and they're like, I'm really a solid 6. And then just even asking, well, what would bring you to a 10? And they might say 6 months. Like, I need 6 months. Like, I'm not ready right now. I've got this, and this going on. They might be. And then if they're just like, well, I don't really know, and be like, well, you know what? Is it okay if I follow up with you? They say, and I used to say, oh, they say everybody's life changes every 90 days. Now it's more like 30. But is it okay if I follow up with you in about a month and a half? How about that? In the meantime, please reach out to me if something shifts or you are ready to go, or whatever. But I just ask for permission for the next time to contact them, because when I find that when I ask people for permission to call them back and they say yes, that takes any sort of like monkey off my back as far as like me feeling guilty about like, oh, I'm nagging, and oh my gosh, like I always worry about like coming on too strong, and so I'm like, so when I ask them for permission, they can tell me no. They can say, you know what? And I've had somebody say, you know what? It's okay. I will call you when I'm ready. I'm like, perfect. That's an answer to me. And so I'm like, perfect. You've got my number. You can text me or call me, whatever, have a great life. I don't say that, but that's what I'm thinking because I never hear from them again. But that's somebody that just can't say no. And there are lots of people out there that just can't say no. And even though in their mind and heart it is no.
Some people just need to watch for a while.
And if you offer to keep them,
Go ahead, Lydia.
if you offer to keep them informed, if you offer to keep them informed about what's coming up, anytime there's a new offer or a new benefit or whatever it is, if you can keep in touch with them that way, that's huge, because they're not going to forget, you're not going to forget, and they're going to feel like you really want them on your team. They're going to feel a little more special, that they're going to be kept up to date, and things like that. And I think that shows them that going forward, excuse me, once they are on your team, you're going to care about them and you're going to keep them updated and, help them through things like that. So
yeah, that's
but
a
it's
good thing
just
too.
keeping the lines of communication open.
Yeah, asking for permission right there. That's a perfect thing to ask for permission for. Hey, do you want me to just, and a lot of times what I say is, here's what I can do. Since you're still thinking about it, here's what I can do. Do you want me to keep you informed whenever we have a new offer? And a lot of times they're like, oh, yes, please do that. And they say it just like, they're like, yes, that's exactly what I want. And you're like, oh, okay, excellent. And so at the beginning of the month, you can send them a new offer, but yeah, so there are ways to kind of, does that help, Melissa? Kind of like ways to kind of round that out so that you're not feeling like you're being naggy, looking for them to say yes or no.
Yes, and even the 1 through 10, I never really thought about it that way. That's a good way to do it too. I've got one now that came to me and I can't get her to give me.
Isn't that the craziest
That is
thing? When
so
they seek you, when they seek you out and then they won't get off the fence and you're just like, really? Like, you called me, lady? Yeah, it's crazy. I know, Melissa, that one frustrates me. I'm just like, whatever. I've got one too that's just like out there in Messenger and I'm just like, come on, people. So anywho. All right. Well, awesome, everybody. So next week we will start with I object. and that's a kind of short chapter. So we might go into a little bit of the next one, but the next one's, we'll see. We'll see what we get there. Awesome. All right, everybody. Be well. Have a good week. I'll see some of you Tuesday, Thursday, whatever, Wednesday, every day. All right. Bye.
Have a good one.
Bye, everybody.